Welcome to the final presentation for Laura Friedman for Object-Oriented Programming, which is CIT260 with BYU-Idaho. My team members are Miriam Erickson and myself and Braden Harada. First, let's talk about static versus non-static. Static class variables belong to the class and not the object. They're initialized only once at the start of execution. There's a single copy shared by all instances of the class. They're accessed directly by the class name. They don't need an object. So their syntax is class name dot variable name. Non-static or instance class variables, the memory is created only once per class. It's specific to an object. It is final in an interface class. It must be assigned a value when defined, and it can never be instantiated. The syntax is object reference and variable name. Object reference dot variable name. Calling a static function, as you can see here on the left, you have the game control class, and there's a static function right here called create player, where it returns a player object and it's passed a string called the player's name. And then over here on the right in the start program view class, we call that static function by saying the object player is equals game control dot create player, and it passes the player's name that was entered above. Calling a non-static function is within the same class. So here is view player inventory. It's a non-static. There's no static in front of it, and it's called by with this notation called this dot view player inventory. So now let's talk about arrays, array lists, and enums. In arrays, you have fixed length lists, same data type for each element in the list. Items can be changed in the array. You can have objects or primitive values, and you reference an item in the array by an index. In an enum, it's a fixed length list. It also has the same data type. However, the items are constant. They cannot change. Objects, you can have objects or primitive values, same as the array, and it's referenced by an index. In an array list, you have variable or dynamic length lists, meaning you can have 1 to 10,000 items in a list, and you can grow and shrink that array list, while the program is running. They can be different data types. The items can be changed. However, you cannot have primitive in an array list. You have to convert primitive to object, and it's also referenced by an index. So here's an example of array and enum. We have, for inventory management, we have an enum called item, and it has all of the possible items in the store are defined here as constants. And then in the create inventory list, we create an inventory array of 10 items. And then we start to assign values to those array items, and we reference the inventory ordinal. We reference the we assign the inventory. We reference the index value through the enum above. So this will be item 0 in the array. In the case of an array list, we defined an array list of actors originally in the game. However, we did not implement it. We wound up going with a similar scheme as the inventory with an enum and an array instead of an array list, because we chose not to have the player define or decide how many people were going to be in the party for the game. Had we done an array list, we would have prompted the user from 1 to 5 times for a name. Now let's look at loops. Here's an example of a for loop. Actually, it's a nested for loop. So there's 2 for loops in here. And this is where I'm sorting inventory by maximum value. It's going do descending inventory sort. So I'm going to pass it the inventory item array, and I'm going to search through that array twice. The first time, I'm going to be grabbing an item in the array, and then I'm going to start to compare it to every other item. And if the inner loop item is greater, the quantity in stock is greater than the outer loop, then I set the largest inventory item to J. I set the index value to J, and then when I'm done with that, then I set the largest item to the index here. So I don't know if that's clear, but there's an outer and an inner loop, and I'm going through that array twice to get the max, to sort the list by maximum value. And as you can see, it's referencing each item in the array by its index values here. Also, you set the limit based on, you take the array dot length will return how many items are in the list. Runtime errors. Here's a throw error. So we're going to go through get inventory item, and the player has said, I think I want to buy oxen. I think I want to buy food. I think I want to buy a wheel. Well, that's what this item here is. It will be a string that will, the value of which will be something in the store, either oxen or wheels. And then I search through the array to see if the item in the array, the current item, equals the item that the player wants to purchase. And if it is, then it returns that specific inventory item. If it gets all the way through and doesn't find it, there's no match, then it's going to throw an exception that says no, whatever it is. It could be food, no food inventory in stock. When you propagate errors, they go up. So they kind of ripple back up. So in this print player inventory, I call the player inventory report. Player inventory report works to display it goes through and it works to print the report, and then if it fails, it will print an error, and then it ripples back up, and if that if print player report came back with an error, then it prints a second error that says reports menu view, and it'll display the error message that it caught in this instance. So that's propagating errors through the coding hierarchy. Here's a catch error, and again we're in reports control, so we're using the same example as before. In player inventory report, it's going to try and print out that character stream, and if it cannot print out the character stream, it's going to catch an IO exception, and it's going to display a report control error and the message that the error exception caught, the IO exception caught. Now let's go to stream IO. Difference between character versus byte. Character reads and writes character data. Strings. You can have strings, character arrays, piped I/O, and character I/O does follow Unicode conventions. Byte I/O, you can read and write binary data. It's processed byte by byte, or every 8 bits. You can have sequence input and output. You can have byte arrays. You can have a string buffer, or you can have an object. And in byte I/O, you following non-Unicode conventions. In writing character data, as a sample from before, you can see here on the left where first I'm getting the date and time, and I'm getting, because it's print player inventory report with the current player and the file name that the player entered over here on the right. And I will get the current date and time, and then I start printing the report. Player inventory report as of, and it will take the date and time that it got up there, and then it starts to print the report. Here's the headings, and then it goes through another for loop for every item in the array. For the player inventory, it's going to print the description, the required amount, the quantity in stock, the units, and the cost. Now let's go to a demo. And here's the start of the game. It's called Mormon Oregon Trail, and I'll say Laura is the player name. Welcome to the game, Laura. We hope you have fun. So let's start the game. And I'll show the map, and you can see we have 2 rows of 13 items, which is 26 places on the map. $1,300 miles to go. Gives me a little bit about the scene. Now, if I try to advance along the trail before I've bought anything from the store, it's going to give me an error. You haven't purchased any supplies from the store yet. So I'm going to go to Manage the Inventory. And I'm going to say, okay, I want to show the player inventory. Now, player inventory shows I have $2,000. So I'm going to purchase some things from the store. If I show the store inventory, there's lots in inventory, right? So I'm going to go purchase from the store. And I'm going to say I want to buy oxen. Well, let me just test the error limit. So let me see that I'm going to try and purchase 0 oxen. It's going to say, hey, you can't purchase 0 items. Try again. So, okay, I'll go back to oxen. I think I'm going to purchase 35. Now, notice there's 30 in stock. Again, it's going to give me an error. You cannot purchase an amount greater than the current quantity in stock. So let's say I want to buy oxen. I'm going to buy 4. And I'm going to buy food. I'll buy 200 pounds. I'm going to buy clothing. I'm going to buy 150 pounds. I'm going to buy bullets. Now notice bullets are $12 per 50 rounds. So if I buy 300 rounds, well, 300 divided by 50 should be 6, and 6 times 12 is 72. That's how much I should spend. And as you can see up here, it says, congratulations, you purchased 300 rounds for $72. You now have 300 rounds in your inventory and $1,298 left. And there's 200 rounds of bullets available still to purchase. So now I'm going to say, okay, I want to buy an axle. I want to buy 2 axles. I want to buy 4 wheels. I want to buy 8 tongues. I want to buy 1 wagon. No, let's say 2 wagons. And I think I'm going to buy a hand cart. Well, now if I show my player inventory, if I quit that and I show my player inventory, now you can see I've got a lot in my inventory. It also tells me I have $1,112 left for money, and I've spent $888. So now I'm going to go back and I'm going to advance along the trail. It's going to tell me, okay, I have 1,220 miles to go. I'm 80 miles from Nauvoo. I'm going to go through this quickly because I want to show that there are random obstacles that should come up. Nothing so far. No obstacles so far. Here we go. I hit an obstacle, and it's not an obstacle I could overcome. It's actually an obstacle that killed me. You got run over by a wagon wheel. Sorry, but you died. Now, when I die, it takes me back to the main menu where I can start a new game, or I can get and start a game I saved earlier. I can get help on how to save the game, and I can quit. So I'm going to go ahead and quit. That's the end of my demo. It's the end of the presentation. Thank you very much for watching.